three books that perfected the brand American medicine included a second book on leading expect, a unification of quality and finance that originated from my grandfather who manufactured one of the most significant medical devices in the history of the world, which is the modern fire truck. He was the chief quality inspector of the American La France in Elmira, New York, a fire engine factory that invented the modern fire truck. It has to be really important because he was, between 1940 and 1957, his work was, in inventing the novel V12 engine, putting it on a fire truck, putting a life-saving quint on top of it, and that happens to be so significant in medicine because our quality and finance systems can draw from the Horse Shepherd tradition that helped make Frank Petoulas a success in inventing the modern fire truck. The sheer size that he was able to build is important. For those of you that are in orthopedists, there's a somatic medical specialty. Organizing the specialty along the nervous system is so critically important because we'll realize that there's supposed to be a primary care of the somatic medical specialty. There's supposed to be a primary prevention, even before primary care, of the somatic nervous system. That happens to be such an important idea for those of you that are surgeons because it's the Trojan horse of tomorrow's work leaking into your schedule today that keeps you from, getting the surgical case that you're supposed to see today, getting the surgical case that you need to call today or else end up somewhere else. And that's something that's so important about perfecting the brand of American medicine. It's something that's so important in this medical sect called leading expect. The voluntary nervous system has absolutely important findings. There are 6 new medical sects that help physicians serve patients in a way that the patient expects, in a way that makes sense for how you want to practice medicine, prioritizing the Hippocratic Oath for you in perfecting your brand of American medicine. Those 6 medical sects are Kent English, which is workers first, which is those that see a lot of workers' compensation cases, which would be in the English tradition rather than Latin. There's the Medici Latin tradition, which is Epicurean care, right? Which is quality and service together, often at a higher price, though qualitatively different from workers' comp fee schedules. That happens to be so important because Kent English is one of the things that's helped us keep the Iron Age. The workers' compensation, the orthopedic systems are part of what helped America keep the Iron Age. There's cities in America that have lost the Iron Age. Now, there's pejorative terms have been used about those places, like the Rust Belt. It's not the Rust Belt. America was the cradle of the Industrial Revolution, which happens to be so significant. And those places have a medical sect, which is Kent English, the physicians that practice largely orthopedics that help keep America and keep America's Iron Age, including manufacturing, happens to be so essential as a call-out, separate from the Epicurean desires in the Medici Latin tradition. The third medical sect is Atlantis American, which is life expectancy focused. Which, there is a whole practice of medicine of extending people's life expectancies, qualitatively different than the business of work, qualitatively different in priorities. Physicians have to have priorities. Physicians can't be everything to everybody. Increasing life expectancy sounds like a great thing, but physicians have to have the first thing. In Atlantis America, it is increasing life expectancy. Atlantis America derives from the 66 good doctor traditions of the different horse shepherd tribes that originate from the Eastern Hemisphere. The fourth medical sect is Jotine Olympic, Jotine from the rider, Jotine from the horse, Jotine from the knight, which is ability first medicine, sports medicine, which is so important because if you look back at history, anthropologically, it's proven that Homo sapiens actually were able to hunt panthers. We outkicked, we were outrunning large cats. That happens to be such an important finding in sports medicine, something incredibly understudied. of which there have been changes in the last 120,000 years or so that have made us less fast, although our vocabulary has increased. Jaghetic and Olympic and those other three are so important because the community standard for litigation. Physicians are anxious about malpractice and their malpractice risk. And yet, if you group all of the physicians into one medical sect and you're asked to be everything to everybody, you're opening yourself to a lawsuit with every patient you have coming in the door. The minute that you say that you are in a Hippocratic oath that's ability first, that's workers first, that's Epicurean first, that's life expectancy first, you have the defensibility to just say, look, I was doing this first. That's what my oath is. And that clarity on oath is clarifying for patients for choosing physicians that they want to be with. The fifth medical specialty is metabolic topology. Instead of Latin, it's the liturgy of topology, of which topology is the language of Nobel Prize winners in medical science of cures. Metabolic topology is cure-first medicine, of which there's physicians that want to do cure-first. There's patients that expect cure-first. You can't possibly get cure-first medicine in those other medical sects. Physicians are busy. Physicians have limited time. Metabolic topology sounds great. I wrote a whole 15-chapter book on metabolic topology. You're all welcome to buy it on my website at profi.me. It happens to be very important. Where metabolic topology, for those of you that are involved in putting new hips and knees on people, where you're in a concrete way curing disease. It's possible that you can enter into a metabolic topology medical specialty, but you have to put some of the life expectancy things on the side. The sixth medical specialty is the source of this book, of which I've written a new book on Jaghetic law, Leading Expect, the quality and finance unification that traces back to my grandfather who invented the modern fire truck. The largest medical device. Is the fire truck. He was the one that put 5 whole life-saving implements on a fire truck. He was able to get a team there in time to put the fire out without hurting people. And so Leading Expect is, first night first. It's about a health system, a health specialty, a Manhattan project for unifying quality and finance, medical specialties and balance sheets, in perfecting your brand of American medicine under a new nation of knights. They're able to rule our health system in quality and in finance. These 6 medical sects are central to helping prioritize physicians, prioritize their day, and de-risk of the community standard problem of commingling a bunch of orthopedic surgeons that, for example, are in 6, 7, 8 different medical sects. These 6 medical sects are new. The other 2 are not changeable because it's, you're a medical doctor, you're an osteopath, and you can be peered against, one, the other, or both. And that's where the malpractice risks come from. If you have a Hippocratic prioritization in these 6 oaths, your malpractice risk drops. You're also able to use a medical scientist that has a musculoskeletal background. I'm a published and peer-reviewed pharmacologist. I'm a published peer-reviewed biochemist. I've published 14 books on orthopedics, on this unification, quality, and finance. That's part of the movement perfecting the brand American medicine, including Jaghetic law, the law of knights. And it goes back to horse shepherds. My name's Petulus. It means stirrup. Like my last name, we are horse shepherds. It happens to be part of my lineage. It happens to be important because we want to be a part of your new medical sect choice in your practice. Offering choice helps patients select the best physician for their problem. It helps physicians segment their day in all of these new ways. The most important way is a magistrate-judge system, which we'll talk about, because there's not a good reason that so many American states have provided an inside lane, a kind of magistrate-judge system in the old world style, in the horse shepherd style, in the Kent English style, for drug criminals. Because many governors have opened up and wove their hand and opened up magistrate-judge for like an inside lane and given all kinds of new benefits and privileges for drug criminals. Where's the inside lane for physicians? Where's the inside lane for law-abiding physicians? Because again, malpractice torts don't have an inside link. And so we have a system that includes training your supervisors at each facility in managing so that all complaints are dealt with as close to the physician, as close to the patient, as early in the process as possible, and are adjudicated internally through a private magistrate judge system that borrows from the tradition of shepherds, and which is an incredibly successful judicial system. Is a private system of knights, but that private system is exceptional in being able to get rapid adjudication. And one of the top things is having physicians declare the medical sect up front. If physicians declare the medical sect up front and patients accept it, then the Hippocratic Oath is prioritized. And so the question is just, did the physician try to get you back to work? They're Kent English. Yeah, they did. Well, okay, so that's their oath. The minute that you stop being everything to everybody, you start being a successful physician, and you be free of fear. You can sleep clear at night, and that's what we want to be a part of. There's a primary care of this, somatic medical specialty that happens to be so important because there's not primary care providers that are, go into orthopedic residency, which is one of the sensations that orthopedists feel. Because orthopedists disproportionately, are competitive, disproportionately have a sports background, disproportionately are huge workhorses. If you look back the last 30 years, productivity increases in orthopedics have been amazing. And yet, physicians are not getting the share of the income that they really should. And why is that important? It's important because that patient that wandered into your clinic today is the one that doesn't need to be seen today because there wasn't a public health primary prevention system or a primary care somatic system to make sure that you were seeing surgical candidates. That patient is a Trojan horse of tomorrow's work that you didn't need to do today, which gets in the way of two qualitative kinds of patients. The first is the patient that you need to see today because they're a surgical candidate, and the patient that you need to call today, to reach out to today, to become a surgical patient, or else you'll lose them elsewhere in the marketplace. Those two lapses in the public health system, in health finance, in health quality, are so critical that that's something that we want to bring to your practice. We have 20 operational products at Profi.me that are in that Horse Shepherd tradition, that are in that Iron Age tradition, the smithery and traditions of metallurgy and quality. The merging of quality and finance traces back to horse shepherds. How does it be so important? Because we have 20 products of which you can pick and choose from that schedule of management services that'll change your practice forever for the better. Changing your medical sector is just a part of it. Reducing your malpractice risk is just part of it. Joining us at Profi.me is like better than your malpractice policy because they don't do anything to reduce your malpractice risk. The minute that you're in a separate peer group, now your malpractice is risk. In the unseemly attorney that's trying to prosecute a case against you can't, because you can't have that expert because they're not even from my specialty. I'm in a different medical sect. That change in philosophy is so important for America, for patients getting more of what they want, for physicians getting more of what they want. The somatic medical specialty, we call it orthopedics, which is the Latin tradition. It's an English tradition. The somatic nervous system is really where the cures originate, not in Latin. The obscure use of Latin is one thing that holds orthopedics back from cures. When we started calling hip fellowships, we started calling it a hip fellowship, we started using plain English, the quality transformed. In the pockets of orthopedics where we've waned from the choice of Latin, which is just a effete, snobbish, ancient tradition, and I don't dislike Latin, but Latin isn't the language of cures. The language of cures is science and math. And so, for those of you that are in this somatic medical specialty, there are 13 other medical specialties that are organized by neurosystems. We share more of that in our book. It has to be a really important, because the perception that primary care, family medicine to be precise, is the primary care for orthopedics, it isn't. The idea that emergency room doctors are in some way part of the system for orthopedists? They aren't. The truth is that orthopedists are the best emergency room physician for patients, are the best primary care physician for patients. Now, because your time's limited, having an upstream primary care option, having an upstream primary prevention option is so critical. So you don't be everything to every patient. You don't let patient confession, because orthopedists, if you look at the math and look at the ratios, orthopedists are disproportionately offering for patients to give confession that have some medical themes. And your time is too valuable to be taking confession. And so move medical science up front, and move a brand and move your medical stack up front in the process. That's part of what we do at ProFeed, so that you don't have to be taking confession, out of 10, 11 patients, and have the 12th one actually be a surgical case, actually be up to your residency. I mean, that's just at the residency level. And so there are these 6 new medical sects we talked about with prioritized medical oaths. So instead of being everything to everybody, you can be Kent English, Medici Latin, Atlantis American, for the injured worker, for the Epicurean seeking patient, for the life expectancy increasing patient. You can be Jotine Olympic, ability first medicine, metabolic topology, cure first medicine, and leading expect Jaghetic, which is first knight. It's knighthood and chivalry first medicine. Those are the 6 medical sects. There are 5 Olympic rings in the Jotine Olympic medical sect atop the treasuries of every nation. Americans happen to come from every nation in the world. That's what makes America unique. American orthopedists really can be the accreditor for the Olympic movement, and should, because all of the doping scandals that we've seen trace back to the lack of an objective arbiter. And that's part of what we're building in the Jotine Olympic medical sect, is to be an international accreditor for sport, for fairness in sport. Because the boundary line of who's a winner is also something that those that are sports medicine and Jotine Olympic medical sect style orthopedists is near and dear to their heart, is fairness in sport, which is a whole qualitative kind of medicine that has a reimbursement method that American orthopedists are the best in the whole world. It really ought to be compensated as a arbiter, because again we have orthopedists from all the tribes of the world. We're the ones that make sense to be that arbiter. And when you think about the Olympics, elsewhere in the world when they're held up, what is the anti-doping methodology? Because again, the cleanness of the American program, if you look back to 1980, for example, incredibly clean relative to other parts of the world. And it traces back to our physicians and our culture and our philosophy. And our notion, the very American notion of fairness. There's 5 Olympic rings in that Jotine Olympic medical sect. There's 4 servers, secretaries, knights, physicians in what's called the Devas blocking of the kingdom. Devas is the ancient Jaghetic, the horse shepherd god, of which was also a numbering system, of which the ancient horse shepherd numbering system was a base 4 system, not a base 10 system, which is where we derive in Revelations, where John the Baptist, John of Patmos, provided 4 horses of the apocalypse, of which 4 is the ancient word, 4 is the ancient numbering system of horse shepherds. So like the 4 horses of the apocalypse included the number 4. The 4 was part of explaining the numbering system. That was part of the education system in old horse shepherd times. And why is that important? Because in engineering, 4 is the irreducible scale in the number of secretaries you need answering the phones, in the number of registration clerks that you need checking in patients at the desk, in the number of physicians to make a medical group, in the number of subspecialties to be able to accommodate a whole marketplace. 4 is the ancient Devas blocking of the kingdom in the old horse shepherd tradition. That's something that's proven in my Kaileios solution to the Riemann hypothesis for prime numbers. In a natural math realm, I happen to have been published in multiple different fields, and not everybody's familiar with the Riemann hypothesis, but it's basically the distribution of prime numbers. And And my high-low solution proves how important 4 base numbering systems are when you look through in prime numbers. That book is on sale at my website, profi.me. There are 3 laws higher than what we call bar law, bar association law, barber attorney law. That happens to be so important. There's medical science law. There's Kyrios relativity. Kyrios, which means main energy. Like a multilinear regression, is another one of my books. I encourage you to buy that. Kyrios relativity is like the natural law, if you will. Like Einstein. And then the Jagiellonian law, which is the law of horse shepherds, the law of dominance. And that happens to be so important because the law of horse shepherd, knights and kings has magistrate judge inside lanes. We have a tradition of providing physicians with an inside lane when a patient has a complaint that could result in a malpractice case. That happens to be so important because again, at profi.me we offer a suite of services that help reduce your malpractice risk. They function like a malpractice insurance policy by reducing your risk, by having complaints adjudicated earlier, by having a judge assigned, by having a whole system of which judging is assigned in contracts. And that's something we want to be able to bring to your medical practice today, because there are 3 laws higher than barber association law. If you look overseas, one of the things that's embarrassing is that the Esquire title that passes for a lawyer in many U.S. states is such a low title that literally is not a knight title, is not a barrister title, it's not a magistrate title. Like bar attorneys, and I don't dislike them. Bar attorneys don't trace back to America's founding, don't trace back to the founding of any nation. Bar association attorneys were a figment of our imagination that were created in Civil War Reconstruction, which happens to be so important because bar association law is reading law. How did you study law? I read it. Really? You read it? You read it in a book? I learned law from a practice administrator whose name is Tom Hollitz, who built the Olmsted Medical Group right in the shadow of the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and beat them in primary care right in their backyard. By building a brand, by being able to get people in, by being competitive. And he learned law by looking at physician contracts, looking at terms and terminations, and practicing a higher kind of law, which that's an administrative law. In other countries, it's called a magistrate. And if you're looking at physician contracts and you're making compensation decisions, term and termination, that's a higher level of training than what bar association lawyers have because they learn by reading. They don't have any quantitative background. They don't have any medical science background. You don't have to be peer reviewed, which is outrageous. Me, I'm a published peer reviewed medical scientist. I'm a pharmacologist. I'm a biochemist. I've published 3 books set perfecting the brand American medicine. I have 14 whole books that I've published. And the idea that there's people that how did you study law? You read it in the book. Is that what the founders said? No, the founders didn't have a reading law. Reading law was created in Civil War Reconstruction to disenfranchise people in almost every American U.S. state. There's not a second legal sect in America. If you look back in time, the signer of the New Hampshire Declaration of Independence was Josiah Bartlett, M.D., a physician, because physicians practice law. That's what bringing a case was. Bringing a case included both those that were sick and those that were torts, those that were harmed. And that helps physicians understand you are part of the ancient tradition of law. Hippocrates means superior in horses. So like you would have somebody come to you with a case. You might not know if it was a judicial case, if it's a medical case, or if they're coming to confess to you. And what's interesting is physicians still have patients coming to confess. They still have medical cases coming to you. And you don't see cases. But you are a judge. In the ancient Jaghetic tradition, you're an every way judge. You're superior in horses. That's what your oath means. And part of the importance is that these 3 laws, medical science law, Kyrios relativity, Jagiellonian law, again, they're all on sale at profi.me, are a higher law than barber law. And no offense, that's where the word bar comes from, is barber. Of which you have to look at the distinction in medicine. There were the barber surgeons, which were the short, the short robe, the aprons, which did like dentistry and became barbers. That's what barber law is. It says it right in the title. The bar associations practice barber law. Again, that means not long robe. You that are physicians, you that are medical scientists, you that are superior horses, you're the long robe judges in the old tradition, in the horse shepherd tradition. You're in every way the long robe judges. And so reintroducing this magistrate judge system so that complaints, quality and service are adjudicated early with all the right terms and conditions. That a patient's dealt with fairly, and even better than fairly, because you're offering them a medical sector where you're saying what the Hippocratic Oath priorities are for you. You're setting yourself up for success, you're setting the patient up for success. So there are 3 laws higher than barber law. That happens to be so critical, because again, bar association law isn't constitutional law. There wasn't a single barber lawyer that signed the United States Constitution, not from any state. There were physicians that did, like Josiah Bartlett. There were medical scientists that did, like Benjamin Franklin. There are all kinds of professionals that, again, they didn't just learn law like reading law. They learned by, me, I was a veterinary surgeon, for example, with non-human primates, that, doing pharmacology and biochemistry. We ran like preclinical trials of treatment drugs on non-human primates to try to get them off of, this at the University of Minnesota, and get them off of crack cocaine, PCP, and methamphetamine. That's an ancient tradition. We did minor dental surgery. Like that happens to be the ancient style of training, was being a superior in veterinary care. Me, I was not. I was superior in primates. Would be the old tradition. And that's part of how I got into non-opioid anesthesia, and part of the day surgery movement that's made such a huge change in America for low dose, no dose narcotics. Because back in 2008, I was the person an advocate of Aurora Healthcare, which was a small local health system back then. It was a small local system. It's now a $26 billion company, largely based on the surgical excellence that we did back in 2008. Because I said, why are you shutting down the guts on all these Homo sapiens? Because again, my training was on non-human primates, rhesus and macaques, and I was like, whoa! You don't need to shut down patient's gut to do orthopedic surgery. What are you doing? And again, I'm just a medical scientist. What am I? A peer-reviewed medical scientist. Alias seems like a huge problem. Why are you knocking all these people out? In PACU, you have nurses, and I don't just, you have nurses in PACU that are like waiting for patients to pass gas. It's like, does that make sense? Is that medicine? That's not how we treat, non-human primates. And so, like, we were part of that tradition of adding some of those new anesthesia options, adding some of those new low-dose, no-dose narcotic options that patients are able to recover in one day. So they can plan to go home in a day. That tradition is so important because, again, we can have a magistrate judge system. It's just like, Dr. Wiley. Dr. Wiley's let's say he's a metabolic topology style where he's cure first. What does he do? He puts new hips and knees on people. He puts more new hips on people than anybody, we'll say in the state of New Hampshire. Happens to be so important. And we have physicians that are like that. And as you're handling that complaint, there's 3 laws higher than the Barber Association attorney. Again, like, the Barber Association attorney shouldn't be able to file a suit if you've had it adjudicated in advance. That's what a magistrate judge system can bring to you. What's so important is that there were 66 traditions of the Hippocratic Oath. When you go back to the Shepherd tradition, there's only 2 medical sects that have survived, which is a problem because we're asking medical doctors and osteopaths to be everything to everybody. And it's not tenable. It's a cause of physician burnout. It's a cause of physician anxiety. It causes defensive medicine. It causes physicians to order tests that are unnecessary. It adds unnecessary expense. It wastes physicians' time. It keeps physicians from seeing the patients that are ideal for them. It keeps patients from getting the expectations set up front for who they're getting care from and why, and what the physician's top priority is. Which the priority can vary, as we showed here, across 6 whole medical sects. And these 6 new medical sects out of the 2 that survived. Because see, after Barber Association attorneys got here, they whittled down all those 66 traditions of good doctors down into 2 medical sects that were forced into just so Barber Association attorneys could have the right to sue you, which originated after the Civil War, which is so important because in 1863, there was a guy named Frank Dent that was the son of a physician in Virginia that came over the hill into West Virginia and just started practicing medicine without any training, having not gone to medical school, didn't have medical science training, didn't have a veterinary surgeon background, wasn't superior in horses, wasn't superior in primates, wasn't superior in Homo sapiens, and came over the hill, and he's trying to practice, during the Civil War, he's trying to practice medicine on people in what today we call West Virginia. It was called just Virginia then. And the local physicians, out of all of the different traditions, which they believed in medical school, they're all high quality trained individuals that went to medical schools, largely on the East Coast. They were sometimes called pejorative names because they were, called the wise old men from the East. Because the medical schools were so heavily Eastern and Northeastern. But as I said, the Frank Dent case was so disappointing, upsetting to the physicians in West Virginia that they declared independence from the rest of Virginia. 3 weeks later, West Virginians showed up at Gettysburg in the decisive Union victory over the Confederacy, which was the turning point in the whole Civil War. This case was physicians who basically, the whole state of West Virginia and the success of the Union hinged on physicians in West Virginia suing Frank Dent for practicing unlicensed medicine, for trying to diagnose, consult, treat. And that was back when physicians were the lawyers. Because when you look back, it's physicians that are involved everywhere in that case. And then after the Civil War, right about the time that you had other issues, the founding of the Bar Association happens simultaneously with Jim Crow and the KKK. If you look at it in 1878, you see suddenly there's Bar Association attorneys. The Bar Association didn't admit any minorities or any women until the 1940s. Were simultaneously created at the same time as the KKK. And again, you have to look at it because the Bar Association is a cynical, listless organization that has nothing to do with America's founding. If you looked at how important it is, there were 2 medical sects that survived the trauma of Barber Association attorneys infringing on the practice of law by Benjamin Franklin's, by Josiah Bartlett's, MD. Medical science and physicians were, the lawyers at America's founding. There was no disrespect. Suffolk Night School where you read law and then became a lawyer. That didn't exist until Civil War Reconstruction. And so resist it. Build a magistrate judge system. Because out of all the 66 good doctor traditions in the Hippocratic tradition, only 2 survived into the modern era through all of the litigation that originated from Barber law. That happens to be a problem. And so reintroducing these 6 new medical sects that are so clear, Kent English is getting patients back to work, such as with the workers' compensation system. Medici Latin is Epicurean first, which is providing service and quality, more hand-holding, often for a higher price than the workers' comp patient, where the employer is the payer often in the Kent English tradition. Atlantis American is the 3rd medical sect, which is life expectancy increasing, which includes things like tobacco cessation, which are things that orthopedists simply don't have the time for. But that's happened to be, and I'm saying an orthopedist that's seeing Medici Latin style medicine, that's seeing Kent English style medicine, doesn't have the time to coach patients. When they're seeing so many patients in an hour, to coach them on, lifestyle things, but Latinized America is so important, to have physicians and especially to have that match so that, those patients have a place to go. The fourth medical sect is the Jaghetic Olympic. Again, there's a lot of physicians that are in the sports medicine tradition that want to do what's called ability-first medicine. That's why they got into medicine. That's why they wanted to start practicing medicine. And so Jaghetic Olympic, where Jaghetic is the discontinuous organ that we call mitochondria. It comes from the word, the horse, the rider, like Hippocrates. Jaghetic, which is written about in my book, Metabolic Topology, is so important to look at as an organ. Because, when you look at sports medicine, you have this incredible dichotomy of there's the thinking brain side of the patient, and then there's the mitochondrial response. And they're two fundamentally different things. And so, me, I happen to have been, a swimmer, as an Olympic hopeful, of which, we found in our sport that, 2 weeks or 3 weeks before a major Olympic event, that you could thin down and taper your workload, and your body would offset by loading your muscles up with glycogen. And there are very, very few professional sports that bothered to do that, and despite the fact that all the evidence suggests that it would work. And in that style, and again, there's a whole system of how you can do that, and you can't have necessarily the whole team do it all at the same time. But it has to be such an important part of sport in this, Jaghetic Olympic, where again, just coming from a Olympic hopeful, we knew more about metabolism than a lot of professional trainers. And the problem is professional trainers, they're not always doctors. It should be an orthopedist probably, in this somatic medical specialty. But that happens to be so key because reintroducing Jaghetic Olympic, which was one of those Hippocratic oaths, is one of those traditions of medicine. Before the trauma of bar association lawyers, like suing physicians into these two medical sects, where we know there were 66 traditions of shepherds. We had 66 traditions of veterinary surgery, 66 traditions of good shepherds, 66 traditions of good doctors. We had 66 different kinds of cheese. I mean, there's every reason to offer physicians more choice, more options, offer patients more choice, more options. And that happens to be so critical because if you join one of these new medical sects, including metabolic topology, lead and expect, where metabolic topology is cure first, lead and expect is a first night first. For those of you that might want to practice law, Jagiellonian law, Kyrios relativity law, medical science law, which is a higher law than what you see in barber law. The Bar Association doesn't have any credibility in constitutional law. And I don't just like them. I have a lot of friends that are attorneys. They, ask them, where you study constitutional law, what's the constitutional basis for a Bar Association attorney? There isn't any. It's a made up Civil War Reconstruction thing that co-occurred with the KKK and Jim Crow in the South, and it's an embarrassing. The Bar Association is an embarrassing vestige of Civil War Reconstruction that America has to do away with, where so many of the underperforming vestiges of American greatness originate with reading law. How'd you learn law? Oh, I read it in a book during night school and something. It's just, how can that be right? Ask a physician, how did you study? You know what I mean? Ask them what their study like. It's such a huge difference. It's so obvious that the shepherd tradition of good doctors, of good scientists, is the origin of law. It's like the divine law of kings, and like the divine natural law. Is it, what did you do? Well, I studied empirical science. I was a veterinary surgeon for 5 years. That's the kind of provenance that you're looking for in law. And so we ask you to join us in these, 6 new medical sects. So we can go from 2 medical sects up to 6, and that are each based on a very clear first prioritization of the Hippocratic Oath in the old-time tradition that makes more sense for the physician, makes more sense for the patient in transparency. And your malpractice risk drops. It plummets. Because the minute you get rid of patient tutelage about what to expect from that visit, that isn't delivered, litigation goes away. Because again, you look at that, total joint surgeon who's put new hips and knees on people, doing a modern day miracle. If you wrote about that in Testament 2,000 years ago, you'd be like, wow, that guy puts on 300 new hips every single year. This is such an amazing miracle. What's his name? This is America. I mean, we have thousands of physicians that do that every year, and we don't show adequate reverence for that practice of medicine or that practice of science. Because if you look back 30, 40 years ago, it didn't exist. It's a modern miracle. And so join us. At Profi.me, we have 20 products, that are part of this horse shepherd tradition to help your practice work better. Somatic medical specialty that we're talking about that has a primary care that's upstream of you as a physician, that has a primary prevention that's upstream of primary care for orthopedists, is central to clearing the non-surgical cases off of your schedule. That requires medical science terms, terminations, conditions. That's something that we're trained to do here. I know that we can help you. There are 6 medical sects that we'd like to add to your practice. There's 5 Olympic rings. There's 4 servers, secretaries, registration clerks, knights, physicians in that heuristic in the Jagiellonian law, the DBOS block into the kingdom. There's 3 laws higher than Barber law: medical science law, Kyrios relativity, like natural law, and Jagiellonian law, the law of horse shepherds. Where we have the magistrate judge system, where we intend to provide the inside lane for law-abiding physicians, rather than what other governors have done is they've provided an inside lane for drug criminals. And again, law-abiding physicians deserve to have the inside lane. And there are only 2 medical sects left. And I think that's so important that we can expand that to 8 and offer more choice for physicians and for patients. In a partridge in a pear tree, because we want to be able to offer. We have a Kent English style search engine that we're trying to build. We want you to join us so that we speak the patient's language online. Because right now, when physicians are searching for medical information, it's often in Latin. That's one of the malpractice risks, is that having medical science shrouded in Latin, a language that patients don't speak, when they're trying to find you, when you have a surgical case trying to find you, they're searching websites that are in Latin. And, so they're building up an expectation based on misunderstanding, mistranslation, getting on your schedule, rather than being a surgical case, for a specialist, fellowship trained specialist or residency specialist, you're getting patients that come in to confess in the old style, it's rather than seeing you, at the top of your license. And so we want to help you, in a partridge in a pear tree. So join us at Profi.me, where you can help join our movement.